Hello everyone, and welcome to my final presentation for History and Systems of Psychology. My name is Amelia Stewart, and this presentation is on Cesare Lombroso. So today I'm going to be talking about who Cesare Lombroso was, what he accomplished during his life, his impact and his contributions, and how that work is still alive today. Cesare Lombroso was born on November 6, 1835. He was the second-born child of 5, and due to the political upheaval at the time, education for children was not being prioritized. Lombroso's mother, however, did advocate for his education, and this really did impact the opportunities that Lombroso had in his life. If it wasn't for this education, we wouldn't know who he was today. When he was 15 years old, he was interested in history, actually. But as the years went by, he was influenced by those around him and began his college career in 1852 in the field of medicine. He jumped around to different colleges, and during this time, he was introduced to the field of psychology. He was curious about psychology, but he did not change his degree. He kept his career education in medicine and graduated in 1859 as a physician. After he graduated and into his career, Lombroso was married. He had 2 daughters. Both of them were married later in life. And one of his daughters and his son-in-law were really impactful in his work and really involved with publications, both with writing books and publishing works after Lombroso passed away. During Lombroso's professional career, his physician focus was really on those diseases of malnutrition, of cretinism and pellagra. He worked as an army physician for 4 years, and this really spiked his interest in criminology. He analyzed the behaviors of these soldiers as far as criminal behaviors, and then he started to study the different tattoos these soldiers had. After this appointment with the army, he held many positions within jails and hospitals in different supervisor roles, and this gave him the opportunity to really develop his theories on insanity and genius. So initially, as a physician, Lombroso was interested in understanding these diseases of cretinism and pellagra that were fairly misunderstood at the time. But they were pretty prominent diseases because they were malnutrition based. Because of the political upheaval, there were many impoverished people that lacked access to healthy food. And while Lombroso was not necessarily politically involved, he did advocate for these patients, which later became an issue because he was appealing this advocacy to the wealthy people to have access to food for the impoverished. And the wealthy people didn't like that. They didn't appreciate that. But in Lombroso's research, he needed that financial support. And he lost financial support because of this advocacy. But he believed in that. So he continued to advocate even after he lost that financial support. In different positions within the jails and hospitals, Lombroso had a lot of opportunity to look at different spectrums of mental illness and capacity. And so one of his more novel ideas, of which he had many novel ideas, one of them was that those who were considered a genius and those who were considered insane were really 2 sides of the same coin. They had similarities, and those mental cognitions and processes were actually more alike than people previously considered. So he knew that both of them had positive qualities, and it just really related it to how those people were able to use the limited mental energy they had for what they needed to accomplish. And he tied the idea of these cognitive processes of both the genius and the insane, and then later to being a criminal, as an evolutionary degeneration that led to deviance from the social norm. So those people who were considered a genius or insane or criminals were all just different. As far as criminology, Lombroso began his study as an army physician, and later in the jails, he was able to study the personality traits and the physical qualities and characteristics of criminals. He wrote books on what the traits of a criminal look like in males versus females. He studied the physical traits of the prisoners in the jail, and he advocated for the use of scientific methods and processes within criminology, which was very influential even in today's society and use of those processes. So some of the physical traits that Lombroso considered to identify a criminal really were based off of facial features. But one thing that Lombroso was able to find in an autopsy of a criminal was a difference in the brain structure. And that really was similar to the brain structure of underdeveloped animals. And this is what led to Lombroso's theory of atavism, this atavistic approach that says that criminals are stuck in an evolutionary stage in which their behaviors benefited them genetically. Today, Lombroso's work with the diseases of malnutrition are not as well developed, though those diseases are not as prominent, both due to understanding, but also due to quality of food and nutrition today. And then many psychologists today, of course, are still studying qualities of the genius idea, and mental illness is very well studied today. The idea of mental energy and how that energy is utilized is a theory that is still utilized and developed today as well. But it's really Lombroso's criminology that is why we know who he is today. And though most of his theories, especially with criminal identification, are not utilized, they have been disproven. Those ideas, however, did later develop into different ways of identifying criminals, such as fingerprinting and mugshots. So this is one of the work that Cesare's daughter republished. So after Lombroso died, she updated his previous publication, and in it, Lombroso talks about identifying criminals with things like telephones, photography, toxicology analysis, and that was all more modern technology that was not available previously. Lombroso advocated for the use of scientific procedures within criminology, which is a theory that is still being utilized and developed today in our criminal justice system, especially as modern technology continues to develop. Those are developing side by side, those theories in criminal justice. But professionals are still trying to research and attempting to understand the cause of crime. That cause, any single one cause, has not been narrowed down. It's still being studied. Lombroso also challenged the idea that harsh sanctions would reduce crime, and instead, Lombroso advocated for sanctions being dealt on an individual basis, which is impacted in today's Western civilization criminal justice system, as crime determines a norm for sanctions, but judges deal sanctions on an individual basis for each situation. So as you can see, Cesare Lombroso is a very prominent figure